when you walk into the church.
Okay.
Because it's like you're walking towards God.
Okay.
That you're entering a sanctuary, and this is the sanctuary. This church was built mid-century, and from what I know, the archbishop that was archbishop at the time here in Milwaukee, he was a big fan of the cross. So if you look, every window is a cross.
Okay, I never noticed
I
that.
don't know if you ever noticed that. And if you look at the stained glass windows, they all have little crosses in them.
Oh wow, yeah.
Stained glass windows are really important in Christian history because there was a time period in the Middle Ages where people really weren't literate, so they couldn't read the Bible stories. So you'll see pictures of stained glass windows from back then where they told stories. They had pictures of the saints and the life of Jesus, and they represented stories so that people actually talk about the pictures that were happening there.
Okay.
And that's why stained glass became so important in Christian churches, and it's continued in here. What's really kind of sad is that as we all sit and we look at the altar all the time, it's not until you get up here that you really can look back at the big stained glass window that's in the back of the church. Music is really important in our churches also, and in our liturgy, because it's a form of prayer, and it really ties everything together. And there's a beautiful piece on that in the Catholic Catechism, and I actually made a copy of that, and I'm going to forward it to everybody. It's like a 20-minute reading, but it talks about how music really can incorporate itself into the Mass, and it's almost chant-like, and it ties everything together, and it's a form of prayer also. The altar in mid-century, when this church was built, that was before they changed everything and made the masses in English instead of in Latin, and they turned everything around in the 1960s so that the priest faces the congregation. Before that, they faced the altar. Come on up. The tabernacle is really important in Catholic churches. It's always on the high altar, the back altar space. In the old Gothic churches, it was in the center. It was built into the altar. In this church, because it's mid-century, it was just a little bit more deviation, a little bit more modern. They took it off to the side a little bit. That is always going to be protected by lock and key. It's where the consecrated hosts are. And in the Catholic Church, we believe that actually is the body of Christ. So that's in there. When you enter that during the Mass, you'll see that Father and the other helpers, they'll all bow before Mass outside of the service. We'll genuflect in front of it before we approach it, and as we retreat away from it. We never turn our back to it. We always just kind of back up, genuflect, and then walk away. The way you know that there are actually consecrated hosts in there is by this candle right up here. And that is called the sanctuary lamp. Okay. So that's always burning. The only time it isn't burning is after Palm Sunday, when we actually when we represent that we no longer have a risen Lord until Easter Sunday. Okay. So basically the sanctuary lamp, it will indicate and honor the presence of Christ, is what I've written here, which is nice. Every Catholic church will have a crucifix, as opposed to the Protestant churches or the Lutheran churches. We're just comfortable with the crucified Lord. The church is going to have, or every church is going, Christian church is going to have a lectern. It's where the lectionary is kept, which is the book of prayers. Do you guys use this book? A couple books that are used. You process up with the gospel, and then that's put on the altar, and then that's read by Father or by the deacon. There's a lectionary, which is a book of prayers. The lectors read out of that book, the first reading and the second reading. And there's another book that's back over here. You'll see that the servers have this book, and this is the book of prayers that Father will read from during the different parts of the Mass, and we'll talk about the different parts of the Mass when we get upstairs. The other thing that is that you're going to find in Christian churches or Catholic churches are the saints. You're going to have always a statue of Mary, because we believe that she's the Mother of God. And you have to think of her as being so holy that she actually carried God within her. So she does hold a different special place for us. The other saints that we have in our church are right up here. That is going to be Pope Pius X. He lived from 1983 until 1914. He was canonized, because in other words, he became a saint in 1954, about the same time that this church was built. Okay. He actually promoted traditional devotional practices and Orthodox theology. He wrote the Canon of Law, which is the laws of the church, which was the first book where actually all the laws of the church were put into one volume. He was a pastoral pope. He believed in personal holiness, piety, and a daily lifestyle reflecting Christian values. The other saint we have is over on this side. He lived from 1473 to 1535. So, in lay speak, he was a buddy of Henry VIII. When Henry decided to split from the Roman Catholic Church, he actually started speaking against Henry VIII, and he lost his head. All right. So he was canonized, became a saint in 1935. So about the same time that this church was built. All right. He was a martyr. So it's interesting that both of the saints were trying to hold the Catholic Church together. So it makes you wonder what was happening in this church, in this diocese, that all of a sudden they were trying to hold things together. There's more saints. Saint Joseph, the stepfather of Jesus. People have a special devotion to Joseph because sometimes he's the forgotten saint. So as my sister says, he has more time because less people are petitioning him. If you just glance on the other side, and you can see it from here, we have a special grotto that's set for the Holy Family, which is beautiful. The other important parts of the church is on the other side over there, there's 3 little doors. Every Christian church is going to have a space for penance, for forgiveness of sins and for confessing one's sins. Basically, just clarifying your conscience so that you can live healthier. And there's 3 more on this side over here. Today we don't use them as often. We'll do communal, reconciliation services, which are beautiful. It's just a little more personal. You actually just have a conversation with a holy person. And then finally, every Catholic church is going to have a baptismal area. And this is our baptismal area. We don't really use it as such anymore because Father likes to do it up in front of them in the congregation. Years ago, the baptisms were done outside the Mass, privately with the family, so that this would happen on this side. Actually, not finally, there's more stuff. This is where we keep our chrism and holy oils. So there's 3 different kind of chrisms or oils that we use in the church. There's the main chrism, which is probably this one right here, that's used for baptisms and for ordinations. Then there is a special chrism that we use, and I'm not sure which one of these it's going to be, for an oil of the sick. And then there's another chrism, which is the oil of the catechumens. So basically when you get confirmed, you're going to have that oil. It's basically olive oil that is scented. There's a special Mass around Easter where where it's passed out to all of the parishes. Holy water. Besides the baptismal water, which is blessed by Father during each baptism, there is blessed holy water. There's also fonts at the entrance, all the entrances into the sanctuary, where you put your hand in and then you can bless yourself. It is a cleansing. It goes back to the days where people used to cleanse before they went to temples. It also reminds us about baptism.
Okay.
That holy water, the candles on the altar, and what's right behind you, the votive candles, are what we call sacramentals. We'll talk about those a little bit more when we talk about the sacraments, but they actually will, there's small little things that you can do to enhance your spirituality, and it's just becomes part of the environment. The Easter candle is the biggest candle that we have. So we start a new Easter candle at every Easter season. It's done on the vigil on Saturday night. So we start a new candle then. It's always burned for baptisms. It burns for the entire Easter season, and then it just burns its way down, and then we got a new one. So it'll be pulled out, it'll be rolled out when we have a baptism next time.
And the year is carved into it on the back?
Yeah. Until 1902, she was an Italian virgin martyr, and she was canonized in 1950. She became a saint in 1950. So.
This had turned off. Say again who she is.
Her name is Saint Maria Goretti.
And she's buried?
She is buried in Italy. She lived from 1890 until 1902. She was an Italian virgin martyr. She became a saint in 1950.
And part of her is in the altar.
Part of her, a piece of her is in the altar, because every Catholic church has a piece of a saint buried into the altar. I'm not exactly sure where, but it's up there. You can't see it.
Oh, I can't really see it here either because the light is
You'll
coming.
be able to. Just turn it on.
Okay, go ahead.
Right. What's hidden from most people where they can't see it is this stained glass window, which is over the sanctuary. It's totally different than all the other windows. And we believe, nobody knows for sure, because nobody remembers anymore, but we believe that it was commissioned just something a little bit different, something a little bit fun, and it represents the sanctuary or the priest's area because the apostles were fishers of men, and the apostles were the first priests, and then they passed it down to the other bishops and the other priests, and that's why that's there. Finally, once again finally, but this really is finally this time, are the Stations of the Cross. And you're going to find those above the soffit that runs around the church. There are 14 stations that run around the church. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we get closer to Easter. But there are beautiful services where we'll actually go through and honor each of the stations as a remembrance of Jesus' walk to Calvary.